Hey, everybody, Yolanda here, and welcome to the conversation. Listen, so as you know, this series, which is called The Indictment, started 2 weeks ago. And the purpose of this particular series was to take and is to take a deeper dive into the criminal justice system, what it looks like from multiple perspectives, and of course, talking about some of our high profile cases. And then more importantly, talking about what it's really like for people who have been involved in the system, whether it's been someone who has been accused of a crime to attorneys and judges and the like. So if you have started watching us with this series, we started with two attorneys, attorney Rob Corbett and Renee Little, and we talked about the system in general. We talked about high profile cases, and specifically, we talked about the role of implicit bias as it relates to the criminal justice system. Now, last week in segment 2, we talked about the system from the perspective of police, in particular dealing with the issue of police reform. And our guests were retired Assistant Chief of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, Vicki Foster, and retired Detective Keith Way, also of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. And we had an incredible conversation talking about what the blue line is, does it really exist, their personal experiences in being a member of law enforcement, their own personal experiences in dealing with race, particularly from Vicki's perspective, as far as being a female officer and being in a position of being able to make change, but also having to deal with the own personal struggles of being a Black female in that role. Both of them talk very specifically about things that can be done within the realm of police reform that will be tangible. So if you've missed those two episodes, all of our episodes are available both on our Conversation with Yolanda Trotman Facebook page, but also on the YouTube channel. So if you have not already done so, definitely need to stop what you're doing, go to the Instagram page, go to the Facebook page, and of course, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe to all things social media at the Convo Pod Show. Now, tonight is very special from the perspective that we are really going to take a dive from really both perspectives, because tonight's guest has the very unique experience of being a veteran homicide detective for over 30 years, and then transitioning from that role to a role of true public service in a way that has not only been historical for our city, but has been transformative in terms of looking at how we deal with the criminal justice system from the perspective of detention and prisons, and detention centers, and how we treat people within that situation, but then also the juxtaposition, if you will, of dealing with the public in a way that means something. So I'm so excited to have our guest tonight. He is a legend in Charlotte. He is a good friend of mine who I met many years ago, knew who he was for many years, but we became friends through our work with my nonprofit, which is called I Speak Now. He has been deeply rooted in the community, and love him. Or if you have issues, one thing that I love about him, he will keep it real with you. He will tell you like it is, whether you like it or not. But if nothing else, he has a heart of gold and a heart for the people. So listen, stop what you are doing, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show, Sheriff Garry McFadden. Hey,
How are you?
I am fantastic.
This is all I can afford, these headphones, so I hope everybody can hear me.
We can hear you just fine, sir.
Great.
Just fine. So, first things first, how are you? Before we get into who you are and your history and all that, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I have a lot of support from my family, a lot of support from my brothers who are in law enforcement. We call ourselves the five Black sheriffs. North Carolina has 20 African American sheriffs, but then there's five Black sheriffs. And
Mhm.
so I hear from one of my brothers each and every day, sometimes too much because we talk in the middle of the night. But that's what I need to continue to do. I had one of the best Father's Days in 20 years.
Mm.
All of my kids came over, and they all arrived together and they all left together, which was a beautiful thing. And they're all on point. You know, they know who their father is. And what I mean by that, they know how I'm going to go in and do what I need to do and keep on going. So, but really, honestly, it's the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. So, and
And
that's
that says a
strange.
lot.
It is. And, each day that I know that I'm changing someone's life inside a detention center, because we don't say jail, and my people are not inmates, they're residents. And so
Mm.
we have fun with them every day. And as much as you all want them to come out, they want to stay in, because there's nothing out here right now for them. And like I said, they don't want to get the 19. We call it the 19. And so they're good.
So, for those of you who are joining us, make sure that if you have questions, make sure you drop them in the comments because we can see your questions. Now, if you're joining us through the watch party, I can see you. So, definitely make sure you throw us a wave or drop a question. If you have a question, we'll get to as many of them as we can tonight. So, we've got a lot to talk about.
Sure.
Yes, honey. All right. So, let's talk about who you are, because if people have not met you or they don't know much about you, then obviously they don't really know your story. So let's start, because you're from South Carolina originally.
I'm from South Carolina. My family took a cruise over to the Charleston area, and we got
Mhm.
off the boat. And some of us stayed in Mount Pleasant area, but most of us, I have a beautiful dialect they call Gullah Geechee. So I'm from South
Mhm.
Carolina. Once my family became spread it out, I found a missing link to my family 2 weeks ago, just by accident. A guy was talking about his family. So I came through South Carolina, very rural, very rural, very rural. My high school never had 500 kids, and we are very close. The principal and everybody's close. And so we were raised with integrity and dignity and a work ethic that you can't ever even imagine. So what I'm doing now is basically I can do this all day. And so when I came to Charlotte, it was a different world. It's the first time I had to deal with other races as much as you believe that we deal with in South Carolina. I went to Everything was black in my high school, even the milk. The milk was chocolate. So
Mm-mm.
we didn't have. So we had that experience, but we had a lot of respect. And then when we got here, it was just work. And if you ever come to my office, which I invite you to, you will never see any awards on my walls. You will never see any plaques on my walls, and you will never see anybody who's has not touched my. Only the people who have touched my life personally. So President Obama's in a box. I got a picture with him, but it's not on my wall. I have my great grandfather, and then it comes down to me and my grandson. And what I live for is the legacy of my family. And so when people say, "Why are you like this?" I tell you, it is just my genes and my generation of being dominant, being forthcoming, being straight up. And people are not used to me being straight up with them, and it's telling it like it is, and I do. And I have to caution myself sometimes that they're not ready for that. Even though we say we want to keep it 100, that's not what we mean. Because
Mhm.
when I say 100, then you want to say, "Oh, well, he's arrogant or he's prideful." No, it's just that I have a mission to create a legacy for my name and for my family that my grandson can follow, just like my great grandfathers look up at me every day and say, 400 years later, our great grandson is now the sheriff. Because the year that I became sheriff is 2018, and the years that his slaves came was 1618. So for me, it's just Gary. I love to cook, I love the grill, and of course, if it's a three-piece suit, customized Italian, I'm going to wear it.
Okay.
So just letting y'all know.
All right. So you ended up coming to Charlotte after high school?
Right. I came to play football at Johnson C. Smith. I came because of Mr. Charlie Danley and Coach McGirt, who grew up with my family. So I got here in 1977, went to Johnson C. Smith, had a great time. And that's why I tell people I'm from Beatties-Ford, because that's all I ever knew. And
Mhm.
my first apartment was 3020 Apartment 1, Beatties-Ford Road,
Mm.
Magnolia Garden. A black man, Mr. Kozar of Kozar Realty, gave me and another young man a chance. We went to him and said, "We don't have anything but our rent, and we only got 1 month of rent. Would you allow us to stay in this apartment?" And he did.
Mm.
And we never had to pay him, the deposit or anything. But he gave us a chance, and I still will honor Mr. Kozart to this day, because he gave us that chance. Me and my friend, his name is Kenny Oglesby. He works for the Fifth Third Bank, and he gave us our foothold. And so we came after I graduated from Johnson C. Smith. Joined the Charlotte Police Department, and then fought my way to where I'm at now.
So when you came here to Charlotte, and of course you went to Smith. Oh, and of course a very proud member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity
For 40 years.
Incorporate.
Corporate.
Yeah, now you're
40
gonna
years.
have to give us a little hook. Can we get a baby
Look,
hook?
we could get the hook, and I
Yes,
still wear my band.
honey.
And see, and what am
Woo!
I wearing? I'm wearing my band, and then I'm wearing. People don't see this. I wear this every day. This is my slave shackle that I wear every day.
Ah, and what? And I don't even know if people ever notice that. And why do you wear that specifically?
Because it reminds me of where I'm going, and it reminds me of my past. If you come to my office is very historical. Beside my desk, I have a bowl of cotton in a red bowl, a clay bowl
Mm,
from Africa. The bowl represents my ancestry from Africa, and I know my history. But the cotton, I go to South Carolina every year and pick cotton out of fields that my ancestors once worked that we now own. And
mm,
so I picked the cotton to remind me where I'm at and what I'm doing. Inside my case, I have my father's first pairs of shoes. I can never walk in my father's shoes. I can never walk in my ancestors' shoes because some of them have them. I have to make my own shoes for people to watch me walk. And so, and I think that's what drives me every day. It's not about me, and it's about taking care of the community. And if you
mm,
ever know me, I can go in the community every day and have no problem, no problem.
mm,
And I think day before yesterday, I had to walk down Beatties Ford Road, and they left me at LaSalle Street. So I walked from LaSalle Street to Friendship Church by myself in my
mm,
uniform, and people were blowing the horn, and they stopped, and nobody. The funny thing, nobody said anything vulgar to me. It says, "Hey,
mm,
Sheriff. Hey, McFadden," and that's how I want to be remembered.
mm. So let's go back for a little bit. So you ended up at CMPD. What year? What year did you start?
82, 1982. Very bad.
And
Racist.
so very, I can
Racist.
imagine that. Put an underline with
Right.
that. But Keith said something. Keith Wade, that was on the show last week, said something very interesting that I never knew. That was it true? That and was it true during your time as well that a black officer could only arrest somebody of color?
That was way before my time and Keith's time,
Okay.
and that was true. I have a picture of those four officers who only could. You could call it in, and it's called Brooklyn, where we at now, where the Martin
Hmm.
Luther King statue is. You could only call it in, and then they would come and arrest that person. What
Wow.
Keith is probably talking about, and I came before Keith, you would go to the bathroom stalls on the bottom floor of what they call the LEC 825 East 4th Street and look on the walls, and you see all kind of graffiti about the black man.
Hmm.
Let's just keep it that way, because if I say something else, I get heated. But we dealt with that, and people don't know how even to this day we try to balance who loves us and who cares about us, and
Hmm.
that's a hard balance for a black officer.
Mm. I can imagine. So, like those of you who are joining us, I see quite a few of you all waving. Beverly, good to see you. Trinavia, Spencer, John, see you. Definitely drop us away. But more importantly, if you have questions as we go on, make sure that you drop questions. And if you are tuning into the replay at a later time, you can actually still comment. We'll be able to see them and address them. So, first day on the job, you are a rookie CMPD officer. Do you remember what your
Yes,
first
ma'am.
call to service was?
Yes, ma'am.
What was it?
My first call to service was in Southside Homes,
Hmm.
to a Miss Sarah. I'll never forget her as long as I live. Miss Sarah and her husband in a fight. My first call.
Hmm.
I go there. They're fighting, not physically fighting, but cussing each other out, pushing each other out the house, never really touching each other. But it was a Friday afternoon, and they were arguing. And
Hmm.
I didn't know what the chicken box, no, the chicken coop. I didn't know what the chicken coop was. He threw the box outside, and then she was mad, and she threw his chicken coop box outside, and so I didn't know what the chicken coop was. And believe it or not, me and I came to love them. And sadly to say, he died, and Mrs. Sarah was blind at the time, and
Hmm.
she thought he was just sleeping in the chair for 2 days and wouldn't get up. And so she just thought that he was mad with her and just in the other room, and he closed the door, and then, you
Hmm.
know, but that was my call, and people called it the hood, Southside Homes.
Hmm.
And then I still to this day love the West Side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love the Ford. I mean, they talk about the Ford. The Ford is great. I love the Ford, but the Boulevard, that's a whole different world.
Mm.
West Boulevard is a whole different world. The
But
West Side.
wait a minute. Were they fighting over the coupe? Like, what
Yes,
did...
yes. It was, and I mean, it was whether he got perch or chicken.
Shut up.
And I mean, so he brought back um, he brought back, and I remember this to the day. It's called Two Dark on Puppies, and which
Mm-hmm.
is two dark pieces of meat on hush puppies instead of the bread. And I've been eating at the chicken coop ever since. So and but it was, and I'll tell people there it was. Imagine being 22 years old with a gun and a badge, and you on West Boulevard.
Mm.
And
In the 80s.
in the 80s. But those people took care of me. To this very day, I have a great relationship with that side. And so that's why when they say, so then imagine working on West Boulevard and living on Beatty's Ford Road. and so
Mm.
and so I didn't know the difference. And I'm thinking that it's the same. So I didn't see one is bad and one is good. I thought it was all the same to me because I was living, I came from Johnson C. Smith, which is 5 Points, and
Mm-hmm.
then you had it all there. So it was everything. So I had a good time.
And so how long were you doing now back then, obviously, because we had talked about this last week too, that it was more community policing back
It
then
was
than the
100%.
concept.
It was 100% community policing. Nothing like we're talking about. We knew people by names. We knew families by name. Um, I still have a lot of respect for the people in those communities because they know me by name. I still have a plate in my cabinet, an orange plate that a lady gave me my first Thanksgiving dinner. I was away from home, and she gave it to me, and I went down to Amy James Park, opened my car door, and has the best turkey legs that money could buy. And to this day, people see, when I go in there, it's like going home. And that's
Mm.
why when people say, a young lady approached me the other day, said, "What you doing over here?" And I said, "I'm from here." When I was on Beatty's Ford Road. So to me, that's where it is all. That's where it all happens.
And so then you become a homicide detective. And
Yes,
how
ma'am.
long before you became a detective? How
Three
long was that
years.
process? That's all?
Three 3 years. I moved up to detective 3 years, and I went from burglary to a year in robbery task force, and then I went to homicide in 1990, and that's where I stayed until 2011.
And so when you first make that transition, what does that do to an officer emotionally?
Emotionally, it's unbelievable. We're talking about New Jack City in every city. We're talking about the Carter in every city.
Mm.
We're talking about a Pookie on every corner. We came when the crack epidemic. Imagine going to homicide the year crack epidemic hit.
Wow.
So when people say they're working 30 and 40 murders, in the first 3 years, we worked 110, 125, and 135 murders, and we only had 6 homicide detectives during that time.
So how in the world do you manage that?
But it's, and then and believe it or not, we had a good clearance rate and a solvability rate because everybody kind of did everything out in the open. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't hidden. They didn't do drive-bys. They just walk in your house and rob everybody, or fighting at the gas station. Somebody gets killed, or somebody get mad over the crack pipe, or inside of a drug house. And so, but then our relationship was good with the community because we knew everybody. And so
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have a big problem with not knowing. We didn't hear the word snitch back then. It was just that was wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
so, Earl Village and Piedmont Courts and Double Oaks and Boulevard Homes and Little Rock and all of those places were hot. And we were there in and out every day. And then you get to know the people, but
Mm-hmm.
you respected them and they respected you. And we never had the problems like we have now. Never.
And so when you were doing homicide work, you obviously had a lot of the major high profile cases.
Yes.
And I remember when I came to the public defender's office in 2002, I feel like I'm a baby, but not really. But when I came in 2002, you were a legend then, because I mean, it was rare that, obviously a case that you put together and a case that you investigated, the reputation was that it was going to be very thorough. There was going to be
Right.
very little in terms of not very little in terms of mistakes made. as far as the investigation is concerned.
And
Now,
I want
that being said, well, let me ask you this first.
go ahead.
I know when you were doing I Am Homicide, and I'm going to get to that in a second, in terms of some of your cases that were most memorable. But as a Black man, as a Black police officer in that during that time, and I'm sure Homicide, you either were one of a couple or perhaps just the only one. The only one. That's what I thought. How real talk, like how do you manage that? Because we talked a lot of that last week about the thin blue line and how to just kind of navigate that. But how did you navigate that?
Okay, let me say this. I never was on the blue line.
Mm-hmm.
People say, and why you say that? Because I saw these people as people.
Mm-hmm.
They touched my heart. I respected them. I didn't disrespect them. So I had a very good relationship with the people. But it was hard seeing people lose their sons one day, their daughters one day. I'll never forget a family. Won't call their names, but I will forever remember this family. And they know I know them. And their mother was killed 1 month, and then their aunt and uncle was killed the next month, and then just before I retired, one of the brothers were killed. So in this family I worked 4 of their murders. But I remember the daughter, because when we took him to her grandmother's house because her mother was killed going to the store, some crackheads out there trying to jack people. I took him to their grandmother's house. Less than 30 days later, I'm at their grandmother's house because somebody went inside, robbed them, and killed their uncle and aunt. And I'm having these 5 kids. It wasn't DSS and all these other things working, and I had to deal with these 5 kids. And to this day, I'm close with those 5 kids. And the daughter, I mean, she's like a daughter to me. And about 6, 7 years ago, I took her a Christmas tree, and me and my son put up the Christmas tree. And I know all of her brothers, and now I know their kids. And for me, so during those hard times is just connecting with the families and show them that I was human. And they seriously believe I am their sheriff. When you say I'm your sheriff, no, I am really their sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they really take that to heart. They call me, and my office has to have 2 people to answer the phones, because I'm still going to answer the phones when somebody said, "Hey, can you come and get my grandfather off the floor?"
Mm-hmm.
Because they have nobody else to call. And so that's the hardest part.
So I remember one of the things that we talked about when you were doing I Am Homicide specifically. You were talking about why you started, why suits became a way of therapy for you in such a way, and the shopping. Tell us about it.
Well, the therapy was I couldn't go home straight home after a murder a
Mm-hmm.
couple of times because I'm still wound up, and I don't want to stay married. I've been married for 31 years now, and I
Hey,
want to
Gabby. Hey, girl.
keep that going. So I would go and shop for clothes, and then it became an image, and so people really didn't recognize who I was, because I would walk in people's house and knock on the door, "Oh, come on in," and people think I'm their pastor sometime, or somebody else, and then by the time I get there, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm the police." But my father, my uncles, if you ever see a pictures of my father, my uncles, my high school teacher, Mr. Prentice Moore, and Mr. Joe, my high school principal, I've never seen these 2 men, and Mr. Joe passed at 102. I've never seen him in anything but a suit.
Mm.
And the suit made this statement. And so that's why I have a closet full now, and now I'm wearing this uniform for COVID-19. But other than that, I'm going back to my suits, and it just makes me feel good, and it gives sometimes it makes people respect me just a little bit more.
Mm. And so when you so how did I Am Homicide come about?
And it's unbelievable. I'm passing my desk one day and the phone rang, and this guy calls me up and he says, "Somebody has researched you, and they said, why are you living under this rock? Can you want to do a TV show?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good." A lot of people call, but they wouldn't be the real me. And they want
Mm-hmm.
me to do this and do that. So ID Discovery, I will give them props, and we'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
ID Discovery says, "Will you want to do this?" The guy name is Gino, and it's called Blackfin. He runs a big company now in LA. I mean, it took off. And so here's a guy who comes to me. His business was one of his friends, the wife, and him. A 3-person business. I was their first client.
Mm.
And we sat there, and he said they gave him X amount of money to find me, and X amount of money if you're in the show business. It's something called a sizz reel. And they had to do a reel, and all of a sudden ID said, ID came and told him, hey, if you can get that guy to sign a contract, you'll get to eat.
And what year was that?
That was 2014. No, 2014.
Now, at
And
this point, you've been doing homicide since for how long?
I had retired.
Oh,
I
you had
retired.
already retired at
Yeah,
that point.
I
Okay.
retired, and I was retired for 3 years at the time. So I
Mm-hmm.
had 835 murders under my belt. Know that number very, very well. And so he came to me, but he came to me with the most purest heart I've ever seen. He basically says, look, I'm starting a company. It's nothing but me, a friend, and his wife. They gave me some money to find you, and can you think about it?
Mm-hmm.
Me and him actually hauled the equipment around ourselves, set it up, take it, film it, send it to ID. ID fell in love with it. Now, what most people don't know is, and ID realized this last week better than they did in 2014, I am the first African American law enforcement officer to ever have his own TV show nationally and internationally. My show now is in Rio, Africa, Australia, and Spain being shown now. So I'm more popular in those countries than I am in the United States. I hear from somebody from Africa or Spain, Norway, and Germany every week. Because now they're seeing my show over there, and the culture of law enforcement is a little different over there. And so we started off. The show went well. We had 3 seasons, and then all of a sudden things stopped moving around, and I started to do other things, and we kind of pushed them to the side. But ID treated me 100% like royalty.
Mm-hmm.
But what we did is I exposed ID to the Black American culture in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, they signed another guy named Chris Anderson and Rod Demery, and it's
Mm-hmm.
called Reasonable Doubt and Murder Made Me. Both of them have shows. Both of them are still running for ID. And I can tell you, we are friends to this day. And I never will say this, but only doing this interview, that I was the first. We were the first.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came in behind me. So we were the first African Americans to have the law enforcement officer to have TV shows.
So I want to step back real quick because 835 homicides that you investigated in your time. Over how many years?
22 years.
Okay. You're the one I think that you probably were. Which one do you think that you probably got the most notoriety for? Because I feel like it was the one that we did, the McFadden Around the Way with the Kids with I Speak. But was that the one, or was it maybe another one?
No, I think that was the biggest one. But the hard part, I remember these people.
Well, tell us about it, because some people hadn't seen it,
about
so they're not.
Henry Wallace.
Yes.
It was a serial killer. It was a serial killer. It is actually known to some people as the first African American serial killer in the nation, and he took the lives of 12. Some people say the number is different, but we know that he took the lives of many women. We would think 50. I would say 50. He's on death row now, but he's very clever. And after Henry Louis Wallace, people, the FBI and everybody else, start looking at the ways that African American commit crimes. And now you see that they're going back and finding that there were African American serial killers operating in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so this is why you see that we have these old gentlemen, African American men, being arrested for homicides of multiple victims, because now they figured it out that, hey, that guy was right in Charlotte, and they started from there.
And so what was the tip? Now, were you the only person who was investigating him originally, or was it part of the team?
It was the whole entire agency. But what happened is they set me up for failure, because you have to say, okay, we don't want to talk about racism. We don't want to do this. So what we're going to do, we're going to say that the Black detective is over the whole case. And so this is when Garry McFadden, the person that everybody knows, was born. Because I'm going to say this, and people don't believe this, but if you go to my high school, they would tell you this. I was a shy kid with one girlfriend. Listen, and I'll bring some people up here to tell you this.
Wait. You know we all looking at you like.
Listen, I'm going to tell y'all this. The only time they said the only time I was a beast is when I played football. When I played football, I was a whole different person.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was just like, "Oh my God, he's going to kill somebody out there." You know, I was a headhunter. I was a headhunter, and and
Mm-hmm.
I lived to play football. But then go to school, go to class, love everybody. Senior class president. Couldn't play a lick of basketball. Just went out for the team. But I was quiet, and
Mm-hmm.
people don't understand. I was very quiet. I was very reserved. One girlfriend, you know, and then all of a sudden I come to.
Really?
If you ask anybody, it's a best friend. I'll tell you. If he ever comes to Charlotte, he'll tell you the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Man, he was quiet. He just
Mm-hmm.
played ball. He just played ball, play on the band, and was quiet.
Wait, what was your instrument?
Saxophone.
Shut the front door. Can you
Me,
still play a little
yes,
bit?
ma'am. Me and my brothers and my cousins all played saxophone. We had the whole section, alto to baritone, and I played tenor, and we had the whole section. And but
Man,
then
shout out to all the band folk. I was flute,
that's
piccolo, little drum
no,
bass. Man.
I
Shout out
did
to all the band people.
I did all of that, and I had a very great high school years in high school, and the same thing. And then all of a sudden, I get to Johnson C. Smith, and then I kind of semi lose my mind, and then I continue
Mm-hmm.
to lose my mind, and um, and then I develop into this person. Um, but I had a I've had a great life. I've had
So
a great
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's not. I had a great life, and still am having a great life.
And so with the Henry Louis Wallace case, I think one of the things that struck me when we were doing that taping of Around the Way was how the kids we were working with I Speak, like how they really reacted, because most hadn't
Yeah,
heard of it, had not heard of him. And just I remember during that case just this visual of who the shock really
right.
within our own communities that a Black man could have
Well,
killed
it's
all of these women.
And he did, and he killed many more. I can tell you that
Mhm.
he killed many more, and he's still on death row. And hopefully, I hope that he'll talk to one or two people. I think he'll talk to one or two of the people that worked the case, and hope he tells us about the rest. But I doubt it. He's at the point where there's an execution date should be soon, and
Mhm.
he's going to take him to his grave. So
And so what a lot of people don't know about that case is that he just befriended the women.
everyone
Um,
send
eh,
Mother Day cards, things, send sympathy cards, pick up people from the airport. Um, Sitting there talking, be in the next room while we're talking to some of the family members because he's visiting them. And so very clever, very clever. I'll give him credit. Very clever.
and so when but you made a comment earlier that I wanted to circle back around. You said they were setting you up for failure.
Well, what happened is, and I'll tell everybody, and I had
Mhm.
people to tell me after this, um, that you needed a scapegoat. And so what happened is I had to go to all of the community meetings. And if you see these community meetings where people, comical, where they're throwing tomatoes and throwing cabbage at you, it was almost like that.
Mm.
People hated me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, which I'm doing now. And it's funny because I'm doing the same thing, attempting the same thing in the sheriff's office. Wait a minute, let me help educate you on what you need to know.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden I start educating people, more town halls, more meetings, and then here, ask the sheriff, ask the police this. Then all of a sudden, it became community service.
Mhm.
And the same thing is happening now. I'm beating my head on the wall with Black Lives Matters and all this other stuff. Because if you listen, we can teach you how to get the justice that you want.
Mhm.
But that's the hardest thing. We got to go through the same thing that we went through in the 90s. The same thing.
And so, for those of you who are just joining us, I see quite a few of you in the watch party. Throw up a wave so that I see you. If you have questions, make sure that you drop the questions in the comments so that I can address, so that we can get to, because I see a couple, so we can get to as many as we can. But as far as, and for those of you joining us on YouTube tab, I
Wow.
see quite a few people. Thank you guys for tuning in. As on a personal note, what I think the thing that is so incredible about you that I think some people know that really know you is that when you and I became friends, I was still on the bench as a
Mm,
judge. And I love telling this story because, this is when I had the idea of I Speak Now, which is, my nonprofit now. And this was as I had gone through the pilot process. And then fast forward to the fall, I was getting ready to pilot at West Charlotte. Ironically, that's around the same time I found myself suddenly getting put into family court,
Right.
which I wasn't expecting. And so
And
anyway,
know
which
how
was
that
like,
is.
yeah, because it was like at that point, it was like, okay, well, if this happens, I know I'm not going to be able to continue to do this
Right.
work. But I had this week or so period where I wanted to do it at a high school. So chose West Charlotte, all that came together quickly. And I had reached out to someone else to come talk to the kids about law enforcement specifically, but had not made the CMPD connection. And he had recommended you. And I remember I said, well, I know Gary, but shit, I'm a little scared. Like, I don't want to call
You can't be
him.
scared.
Yeah, because I knew you, but I didn't know you like that. So we had a conversation. It was an easy yes. And what I loved was the fact when you came in, you not only did you just own the room, but the kids really became involved and really asked you excellent questions, but you were very straight up with them. And so at that point, that's when Christina Watkins was doing her 2-part story at the time when she was at Spectrum. She left us and went down to New Orleans, but
Hmm.
she did the 2-part special of I Speak for Justice. And that's how I Speak took off. But what people don't know, not long after that is when I decided to leave the bench,
Right.
because it really just became, I knew I had to make a choice. It was like either stay and then I Speak dies or
It's a
just
good choice.
leave.
It was a good
Yes.
choice.
So it was the best choice. But you were the second person that I asked to be on the board of directors. The first person was Annetta. She was easy as you were the second person. And literally, this is how good God is. Like I left January 1, the firm opened. By MLK Day, we had that meeting at my
Right.
house with our board of directors and took off from there. But you have had always, whether it was Bruns Academy or whatever school we were working with, if I needed somebody to come, you would drop everything and come out. And you were able to talk to a group of fourth graders. You were able to talk to a group of high school juniors and seniors. My favorite story, you have to indulge me, that I have to tell is, you know who I got to bring up?
Yes.
JJ.
JJ.
Yes.
Lord have
And
mercy.
so this is when I knew, on a personal note with I Speak, like how powerful it can be, but how important relationships are. So JJ, if you will, if you can imagine, this fourth grade young man who volunteered to be the bailiff in our mock trial, except every single time he had to call court to order, he would just clam up. Like we had, I think Deputy Almodovar, I think she might be watching.
Yeah.
She was working with him, just couldn't get him to say all rise out loud. He just couldn't do it. So much so, because I think you remember this, you were there that day. I was about to pull him from
Yeah.
that role and just have him do something else, because it was just like, this is happening in 2 weeks. Like, JJ, please get it together. He was like, I can't do it. And you were like, give me a second, let me talk to him. And you took him out in the hall.
I still have that picture.
And I took that picture, and he was just, but whatever it is, like he became a whole new kid. And it was so powerful, not just to watch him do it in the classroom, but for him to bring this little fourth grade boy in this courtroom, bringing court to order, was incredible. But you had left. But what was really powerful with him is that after that, when we went over to Show Mars, even when they were going through the metal detector, he was still the leader. Like he was
Right.
helping to direct them through the metal detector one at a time. Just, okay, you can go next. You can go next. But then you guys developed a relationship that was so powerful. It just transcended that little bit of time that you
Yeah.
worked with them in the classroom. Tell the people about it.
Well, I mean, it's for me, it is that, and here's what I tell people: you don't know me, but I'll cry in a minute,
Mm-hmm.
because I see these kids' hearts, and you have to give them just that little bit to say, "I love you. You need to do this for me." No, nobody else. When you go there, own the room,
Mm-hmm.
on the time. And JJ was scared, but most people didn't know this either. JJ had just lost his father,
Mm-hmm.
to a heart attack, and he wanted to be that man in the house, but he didn't know. And I said, Jay, this is where it starts, right here. Own the room. We need you. You up. You next on the bench. And he went, and all of a sudden he became, a pistol. And we kept up with each other for a couple of years, and we still, his mother still calls me from now and then. We still trying to connect. But giving love to these kids. If you want me to come, you put an old person or a kid on the list, and I'll be there. because they touch you in ways that nobody else can. And
And
but Jay was a great kid. He was a great kid.
and they don't know that because he wanted to be a chef.
Yes.
And was it that did you? I can't remember if you bought him an apron or took him.
I went out and had him a customized
That's
chef
right.
coat made with his name and everything on it. And I remember when the lady says, "Who is this for?" And I said, "It's a kid. He's in fourth grade." I said, "Just make it." And she
Mm-hmm.
made it and put his name and everything on it. And even she got emotional when I was telling
Mm-hmm.
her the story. But you have to think those are things that people do for kids that they will remember the rest of their lives and they will do for others. And the same thing happened to me. The reason I dress like I dress is because of my eighth grade teacher, Mr. Prentice Moore. And I'm going to date myself. This is when men bought clothes from a magazine called Flag Brothers. Nobody know what that is, but
Nope.
nope, don't worry about it. But some of the old heads know what that is, and but he instills so much into us, and so I want to do the same thing for these kids that I touch because you never know where they're going to end up, and that's big,
Absolutely.
that's huge.
So Trinavia has a really good question. I'm going to post
Yes,
it. She says, "What is the biggest misconception about you or your role that you'd like to clarify for the public?"
thank you so much. I am the highest ranking law enforcement official in Mecklenburg County. Nobody outranks me. I am the highest elected official in the county. Nobody outranks me. The sheriff's office is an office. It's not a department. Some people say sheriff department. It's a sheriff office. We are an elected official. Even if when you read the governor's orders, people don't know how much power we have as a sheriff. If you see some governor's order, they will say at the discretion of the sheriff. And so that's the part about the misconception of the job. Now, the misconception of me that when you ask me, just like you said, I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not, and I'm not going to cut the corners. And so people, I just want to be straightforward, and that has come from my family genes. We're going to tell you where you're at all the time, so don't come to me. And I can't be politically correct. That'll never happen with me. I can tell you if you step to me and you say something, you're going to get it back. If you throw
Mm-hmm.
shade, I'm going to throw shade. And so expect that. So people think that I can be humble, but if you attack me and my character, I'm going to give it to you. As I said, I'm going to give you the business. But I want people to know if you treat me with respect, you will get respect every time. But
Mm-hmm.
if you come to me, I'm coming to you. Somebody threw some shade to me the other day that I could throw it back, but I won't because I said I ain't got time to fool with that. That's garbage. But no, if you attack me, you're attacking my character, you're attacking my legacy, you're attacking what I'm trying to do. But basically, I'm a big baby.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd actually sometimes I came home and cried one time. My wife said, "What's wrong?" I said, "This kid said I gave him hope again." I cried from Independence Boulevard here. And that's the big conception that people don't have is sometimes they take advantage of my heart
Mm-hmm.
because I do love people. And then when I don't have that middle point, if
Mm-hmm.
you start it, I'm going for it. I'm going
Mm.
for the win. So that's it. But thank you, Ms. Montgomery, for that question.
Great question, Trinavia. And if you have any other questions, make sure you drop them in the comments. We're going to switch gears for a second
Okay, talk to me.
because we have a trivia question, people.
Uh-oh.
So whoever gets the trivia question, for those of you who've won trivia questions in the past, your t-shirt literally got mailed today. So yay, it is on the way. But for those of you who are watching, okay, so here is your trivia question. You ready? Okay. Who was the first Black elected sheriff? You win. You get a dun 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 dun, dun Convo Pie Show t-shirt. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Sizes from small to I think double XL. Who was the first Black sheriff? When I see it show up in the comments first, you win. Or if I see it pop up on the watch party, you win. And you can Google it. I'm not gonna make you tell. And actually, first Black sheriff, and where was he born? Bonus question. All right. So while people are looking for that, so let's transition. So you retired, you're living life, and dang it, you decide you're gonna leave us at I Speak because we were mad at you for a minute and decide I'm gonna run for sheriff.
Believe it or not, when in 2011, I was working as a consultant all across the country. People
Wait a
don't know
minute,
that.
hold on. I gotta pause you for a second. Okay, so let me clarify. Gary McFadden is not, I mean, the first Black elected sheriff ever in the United States. So let me, oh, well, never mind. We got a winner. So some people thought it was you.
No,
What I
in
meant, like
Charlotte,
the first
yes.
in Charlotte, yes. But in the country, yes. Tailor Made, you are our winner. Walter Moses Burton was the first Black elected sheriff. What state was he born? Anybody know that? You got that second part of the question, Taylor? You already got your shirt, but if you get
Taylor
the
got to
second,
get it. Taylor
Taylor
got
got
to
to get.
get
Let
it.
me see if you got it, because I mean, you could Wikipedia it. I don't see it. Sorry, Rod. I meant United States. I said first Black sheriff.
Thank you,
So,
Rod. From
Spencer, yeah, you close, but you weren't quite fast enough. But whoever gives me the state where Walter Moses Burton was born, I got a bonus shirt.
mm,
Bonus shirt.
somebody need to
Nope.
look it up.
Good guess, Spencer. Not Texas, though. That's where he was elected. He was elected in the state of Texas, but not born. That's not where he was born. You got it. Now, Taylor, I can't give you both shirts, but Taylor got the bonus question. So, Taylor, you can't have two shirts, but Spencer, I got you on the other one. You close. All right. So, Walter Moses Burton was born in North Carolina. Little known Black history fact. In 1840, he was the first Black elected sheriff in the state of Texas in 1869. This was right after Reconstruction, or I'm sorry, right during Reconstruction, where of course our political parties were very different historically. The Republican Party was the party that that championed Reconstruction. Democrats were completely different. Now,
Correct.
Trinavia technically says, now you're born in Sumter, so
Yes.
technically you're the first Black elected sheriff. What do you think, Gary? Should I, because I wasn't clear on the question? Should she get a shirt?
Yes, you should get a shirt.
Okay, so
She
I'm gonna
get.
get
She
it.
get.
Trinavia, I got you, girl. All
Thank you.
right, so
Thank you,
Taylor,
Trinavia.
Trinavia, Spencer, send me send me a direct
Very
message
good.
with your address and your shirt size, and I
Very
got you.
good.
I got
Very
you.
good.
All right. So you decide, you make the decision, and I remember when me, you, and Anetta sat in the office, and you were like, "I think
It wasn't my. I
it
mean,
wasn't
people.
your plan."
No, my plan, and people don't know this. I was traveling in the United States. I was doing my TV show. ID was definitely having me all over the country speaking.
Mhm.
I had a consulting company that most people don't know that was doing good.
Mhm.
It was doing so good. It scared me one time. One lady was paying me some money just to talk to me, I believe. And she started buying me equipment. I mean, I got nervous. I thought she was with the government, but she had this case that she wanted me to work on, and she took care of me. And
Mhm.
so then a couple of cases that we won. One guy, we won a case, $6.5 million. We sued the city of Greensboro for incarcerating a young man who wasn't supposed to be incarcerated for a homicide. And the name is Lamont Armstrong. If they want to Google it, look it up, because that changed my life.
Mhm.
That put me on where I'm at now. And then people talking about, you need to run for sheriff. I never wanted to be sheriff. Never even thought about being sheriff. I was living on my grill in the backyard. But then when people start saying, you can change what you need to do. And here's what people don't know. And I'll tell this short story. Me and my family were celebrating 70 years of success because we bought our first school bus in 1947.
Wow.
And so we were in Columbia, South Carolina, celebrating accomplishments of our family. And it was a 70th anniversary, 2017. And they said, well, what are you going to do with your life? I said, I'm good. I'm happy. But then in our family, you can never do enough. And
Mhm.
so me and like I said, people can come to my office and I'll show them this. So I have pictures of my grandfathers, his brothers, my dad and his brothers, and everybody else. So me and my cousins were standing together, who were all men,
Mhm.
and somebody snapped a picture.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget it. One of my cousins came over and says, it's your turn now. And we
Mhm.
look at all these pictures of these men doing good thing, and they were saying, now it's your turn. And they were talking about every one of us in those pictures. And they said, go back to your cities and still leave your name to be remembered.
Mhm.
And after that, I came back and woke up in the middle of the night and put a video on in January and said, I'm doing it. And it happened.
And what a
It, ha-
journey it was, for sure.
it was a journey. It was a
Shout
journey.
out to your campaign manager, Annetta Ford,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
campaign whisperer. I know you watching. Hey, girl, hey.
It
It was
was,
quite the experience for sure. And it really showed some of the ugly side of Charlotte and
oh my
people
God.
who
No,
did not believe that there could be
listen,
change and fought it
it
tooth and
is,
nail.
it is still that ugly side.
Mm,
It is still that ugly side. If you write a book, I have to stop every time to say that chapter. When you think you're seeing it and you think you heard it, and now what I'm seeing and hearing now, it's a whole nother chapter, whole nother
mm,
chapter. And just when you think that you see it, and then you think of people who you believe that were leaders,
mm-hmm,
and you past and present, and they may say the same thing about me. But as I told them, put your numbers up. When I say 835 for homicide, anybody want to challenge my numbers or challenge what I'm doing, and that's when the Gary comes out. That's the Gary 2 R's come out. Then what you want to do?
did you say Gary 2 R's?
2 R's. I have to tell them that. That was part of the campaign joke. I was forging my name and all that. And so, but here's what I tell them: I made my promises to this city of Charlotte of things that I was going to do.
Mm-hmm,
Anybody want to challenge that? I completed all of my promises in the first 45 days
mm-hmm.
that I got in office. So whatever I promise you, you can ask me if I run again. Um, what did you do? I did everything I said and more my first year.
So let's
And
talk
so,
about that.
yeah,
So, because some of the things that you've done specifically in terms of programs for people who are at the detention, well, the first thing that I think that was telling is that you stop calling it jail and you call it detention center. Why?
because terminology was big. Believe it or
Mhm,
not, before I took this job, I went to Germany and studied their prison system, and I went to Norway and studied their prison system or their correctional system. And we are so far behind, we can never catch up to them, no
mhm,
matter. And so, terminology. When people want to be acknowledged, sir, ma'am, titles are big. The way that you approach somebody. Um, are you a receptionist or you're the secretary? you
mhm,
know and so changing that, resident instead of inmate, detention center or the jail. Barney Fife and Andy Griffin had a jail. I have a detention center where I'm temporarily detaining people for a moment,
mhm,
and we give them that respect. So changing the name, we even changed it on the outside. Nothing
mhm,
says jail even on the outside. So that was the beginning of what I wanted to do. So by changing that, and then we moved on.
mhm.
How we treat our staff, how we treat our residents, and then we started the programs after that.
Okay, so there's a number of programs, a culinary program and several others, but a lot of people don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And thank goodness for getting rid of that doggone greenhouse shenanigans that anyway, we ain't even gonna go
Well,
there. We're
no,
not
ma'am.
gonna go there.
No, ma'am.
We're not gonna go there. But anyway, real programs that actually have people
Real,
that give them an opportunity once they get out to not have to come back. Let's talk
and
about it.
and the only thing that slowed us down was COVID-19. We have a
Mhm,
barber school. That means we have barbers being trained inside, and once they leave, before they leave, if they have to serve, I think 1,000+ hours. We can actually get you your barber's license before you leave. Now, how are you going to get a job? I'm in touch with 75 barbershops across the state of North Carolina.
mhm,
And Walmart partnered with me and a guy named Sean Corbett with Cops and Barbers. So
mhm,
we are opening barbershops in Walmarts. We have the first, well, he has the first on Wilkerson Boulevard here in Charlotte, but now we're going to Georgia, we're going to South Carolina, and we're going to Alabama. We have partnered with Walmart to open barbershops in all of their Walmarts in those cities. We just have to find the right Walmart. Now, the culinary school, I spent yesterday with Central Piedmont Culinary School and had a great time. Culinary program, we started that. We're going to have a cosmetology program. We have a digital literacy program. That is huge because some men and women cannot read and write. Let's be honest.
mm,
And so we create the digital literacy program. And if you complete the program, which is about a 6-week program, the day that you leave the detention center, you get your refurbished laptop.
mm.
And now, this year, we will have 1,500 tablets coming to the Mecklenburg County Detention Center. So our men and women will have the tablets. Now, I have to caution you, let me clarify this. No, they can't email you no pictures. No, you can't email them and all of that, and no love things. So do not spread that rumor. be a good messenger. And I say that all
Mm-hmm.
the time.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the job fairs. We had three job fairs there where we had 62 people. We had 58 people to get 62 jobs because some people got 2 jobs. So we are equipping them. Of course, fashion is my thing. We have our own 4th Street haberdashery.
Get
Um,
out of here. And
yes, ma'am.
you notice how you just kind of set up a little bit of haberdashery.
Haberdashery. We have a
Yes.
haberdashery, and so the haberdashery is if people don't believe it, I'll send you pictures. When we have these job fairs inside, we dress for success, and dress for success did help us. But I came up with my own idea. We simply went to the dry cleaners all around the city, give them an IRS letter, say if you want to take this, write this off your tax, but give me the old suits and clothes that you have that's been here for 2 and 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we do all of that. So those are
That's
just some of the
incredible.
things that we're going to do. We changed face-to-face visitation.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, small things that people don't understand. I reduced the telecom services that we were charging our men and women at the Mecklenburg County Detention Center by 62%.
Wow.
That means not paying all that money for phone calls and video conferences and all that. We reduced that because as the sheriff, I control the contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to ask anybody to review the contracts. I'm the sole person to whether I accept the contract or not. So we have, and I had a list of other things that we did. We created the LGBTQI committee
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know everything about the LGBTQIA committee. We had to do that. We have something called Camp Cradle, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
very proud of Dr. Keith Cradle. Previous sheriffs never allowed the kids to go outside, ever,
Isn't that something?
ever.
Isn't that something?
So we created our summer camp called Camp Cradle, and me and a young, give him respect. Me and a young man are the badminton champions of 2019. We never lost a match.
Child,
So
that's just because I ain't been over there. Do you not know my skill set, sir?
so
All
so
right,
we
then.
we created that. This past January, we have people have big programs outside. So what I'm trying to do is whatever program you have outside, we have inside. So we have our women's conference. We didn't invite TD Jakes or Sister Yolanda or nobody else. We have our own women conference. This to be named Still Our Rise.
Mm-hmm.
So we have guest speakers and our ladies come, and we have the men conference called Removing the Mask.
Mm-hmm.
And we have people come in and we have a men's conference. This past week, we had our first book club. The men in the detention center are reading the book Just Mercy. And
Mm.
so after they read Just Mercy, we're going to have a debate. And then we're going to do another book and we'll debate that.
Mm-hmm.
This past week, my ladies, which I call my queens, and anybody wants to try us, come on and get it. We have a women's debate team that are
Oh, you
certified.
speaking my language now.
Wait, now I'm gonna tell y'all, anybody, we can zoom in and have y'all to come. So my ladies debated with the other ladies, and I'm gonna tell you, they're scared every single body, and we have a tape we'll share with you. The debate was, is incarceration punishment or rehabilitation?
Mm.
And they went in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked at, and because believe it or not, we had 2 people working for my agency that were debate coaches that we never knew, and they came in.
Right.
And so
I want in.
I
Let me in.
know somebody else is, I know somebody there is watching online. He's an attorney with a bow tie. I know he's going to try it. But I ain't gonna call his name.
Well,
But
we
I
know
know
of you, but I know you're talking about.
I think if you want to get a team and do a debate, my ladies are ready.
Yeah,
And
right.
so all of that is to say that we're just trying to be different and
Mm-hmm.
and give people opportunities. This before the end of the year, we're going to create something else. We're going to create a space for families to visit and spend quality time with their loved ones.
And that's incredible because I know for years before you came on board, just the fact that people couldn't have
Yeah.
face-to-face
No, we
visitation
have.
was just ridiculous. And that coming back made a big difference in just the psyche of individuals just trying to navigate that space while they're there
Yeah.
temporarily, for sure.
And we have this great room that we have experimented with to see a father read to his daughter or hold his daughter and we have the room designed so well that when the children come, they see the wall as like going in a daycare, and they never see their father or mother with a detention officer. They just walk through it. They're just in this room, and then all of a sudden, their father just come through a door, their mother come through the door, and it's looked like a giant daycare. And so I may get flack from it, but I'm the sheriff.
Whatever.
I'm
So
the sheriff.
So there's a couple things I want to touch on real quick
Sure.
in terms of what's been happening recently. Let's get to the thing I think that's popped up most recently, which is the number of COVID cases, because we've done so well
Well,
keeping it out. And now there's some documented cases of people within the population and as far as staff. But we
no.
need to set the record straight.
Let me set the record straight, and you can get the numbers. No Mecklenburg County resident in the Mecklenburg County jail contracted COVID-19 inside the facility.
Okay.
We have 3 young men that came from the federal side, being in 6 prisons, came in and brought COVID-19. But my men and women do not have COVID-19. We had some staff members went to a baby shower and they contracted COVID-19. We had a brand new class to start, I think, a week ago. So these are all outside people who just coming to us to be hired and begin their class. Their first week in class, one of the young men didn't feel well. He went to the hospital. He got COVID-19. So we stopped everything. And I think out of the 38, I think 22 people had it. But let me set the record straight. It's not inside the Mecklenburg County Detention Center where your loved ones are, no matter what they say. And so we have to report it back. And so the people who did have it were people who came in for as the residents. Now, we had a couple of staff members, 4 or 5 staff members to catch it, but they were outside, but we caught it before they went back upstairs and in effect, my housing unit.
Okay. And so they then, because you're still doing temperature checks, are you still
We
doing
do
temperature
temperature
checks and all
check. We
that?
do temperature checks every morning. We do screening every morning. We have 6 zero pressure rooms. So if we get somebody in, say if somebody comes in off the street and then they get tested and then all of a sudden they got COVID, we put you in a zero pressure room so you don't go into the general population. Now, here's what people don't understand either. Each person in the Mecklenburg County Jail Detention Center, say it for both people who may say, why are you saying both? Because some people still saying jail. I say detention center. Each resident inmate has their own separate rooms. So we can quarantine like that. So when people say, well, Mike, no, we can put your cousin in the room, close the door, and he's isolated from the rest of the people. And then we'll monitor everybody. And if somebody comes up positive, we move them to the other part. And we have a whole area for that.
Okay. And so for those of you joining us, again, for the first time, you can still drop your questions in the comments if you have questions, because we got a couple of issues that we're going to tackle before we wrap it up. For those of you who didn't know, and if you're not already following him, his IG handle is, in fact, SugarFree Talk, which is why I named this segment SugarFree Talk, because the thing about you, we're not sugarcoating the facts. They are what they are, and this is what it is.
I call it the bitter truth. If you want to talk to me, you get it.
Right.
You know, we bring you to business. Now, what you do with it after that, you know, I had to step to the clergy the other night, you know, and you know, that's just what I do. So.
Okay. Well, okay. Hallelujah.
Praise the Lord.
All right. Yeah. So let's talk about the arrest that happened last week outside of the jail. A lot of controversy about what happened. You know, I know when people were texting me, I was like, first of all, I've been in court. I don't know. But the thing that struck me, and because I wanted to see what you said first, and I couldn't find that. All I could see was just the melee.
Everybody needs a platform, and everybody needs to feel needed. And so what a lot of people did, nobody knew what went on for 3 weeks. And so they have to jump on a bandwagon so the group would accept them as allies. And I'll say that. A lot of people jump on the bandwagon so they will look at them and say, they're like me. But here's what happened. They never asked for permission, which is all right. Let me make sure we get that. But for the record, they never asked for permission. We
When you
never knew
say
they were
they, who? Because some people don't
the
know the backstory.
organization. We don't
Okay.
know who they are. All they came up, we see some tents one day and they say they are jail support. And so we went out there and I said, okay, they're jail support because it's protests and stuff. 5 cases of water, jail support. Couple of days, 10 cases of water, 2 more tents, 10 people. Couple of days, 3 tents, 4 tents, 20 people, a pit bull, people sleeping outside. Okay, more water, more food. Okay, so then you have to understand, at this time, conflict is almost needed. People want conflict. So when I go up there and say, who's in charge? F you, we don't tell you. No, okay, great. Well, come back. Who's in charge, man? We ain't got to tell you that. What do you mean charge? And then you get into who are you, or why you stand up? Why you not stand up for your people? Then you get a whole nother dialogue. You leave it alone. So then what happened is it became pit bulls, people dancing in the street. The bus lanes were being backed up. I try to work with them. If you're in the bus lanes, don't do it between 3 and 5. But then there was no organization about it. There was no leadership about it. There was nobody you could talk to, and nobody you could say, if anything happens, talk to me. So when everybody did the march on Myers Park, when all the white people were walking with us and we were all friendly and everything, somebody came up to me and said, Sheriff, we are having a problem with your deputies won't let us use a bathroom at night. I said, okay. I put out a memo to tell my deputies, if these people need to use the bathroom, let them use the bathroom, because number one, I'm tired of smelling urine, and I'm tired of finding human feces in my pathways and behind the bushes, and it's a bad smell. Okay, so we put the memo out and we believe that worked. Then we get to the part of, do you need to be screened if you're coming in our building? Well, I will go to them and say, get screened every day, go in our building. But the dynamics and the people change every day. They start changing every day. So then we get into the week of the city opening back up. More people walking up and down the sidewalk. More of my staff are being, yelled at, called names and everything else. We dealt with it. But then when we have citizens walking back and forth from the detention center to what they call the gun permits and getting fingerprints, some of them may wear red and white hats. Some of them wear symbols that may depict racism, like a flag on a jacket. So then you had this hollowing and howling and everything else. Then they take down my flag. Then they start spitting on my windows. Then they start sleeping in the bags on the sidewalk. And then it was a totally disregard for law enforcement. So here's what I said. Let me go
And
out
it's
and
on
talk.
Twitter for anybody who hadn't
Right,
seen it. Like literally what you said, calm, collected, is on Twitter.
right.
If you
So
haven't
we
seen it.
so
Okay,
we
go.
go back and say, can we talk to you? And I'll never forget this lady. This lady broke down and said, I did not sign up for this. This is unbelievable. Then we have a guy, and I tell people, think about this. The day that the public defender's officer made their stance about Black Life Matters, there was a guy in the street taking off his clothes, throwing them up in the air, throwing his shoes up in the air, and he's, flipping the bird, and everybody, nobody, including my deputies, including CMPD, confronted this young man, that we know that he has a problem. So I go back and forth with these people. Somebody has to do something. So then at the point it got out of hand, too much feces, burning on the flag, spitting on the window, I went to them and I said, who's in charge? Ain't nobody in charge, because it's deflecting what I'm saying. I said, here's what we're going to do. You're going to have to vacate the property, but we will help you. We will help you move. We'll bring the trucks at 2 o'clock, but you can't stay here anymore, because I am authorized to take care of this property. So I'm thinking it's all right, because there's only like 12 people out there at the time. So I'm having a meeting with CMPD, and people start showing me all the stuff on the internet that they are inviting more people to come over. So when we get there, there's about 40 or 50, maybe 100 people there. If you look at the video, my deputies do not have pepper spray. They do not have tear gas. They're not in riot gear. They have Flexicuff, and they came out and talked to them. Now, here's what people need to understand. Some people are going to classify this as a peaceful protest. That is what you classify it as. Now, if you are in the mind frame like brother Dr. Martin Luther King and all these people are, if you are willing to go to jail for your cause, I believe in you. So then you should allow us to peacefully take you to jail. So if you're standing for a cause and you believe that sitting in and arrest me, sure, lay down on the ground. Sure, you don't have to assist us by walking. If you want to lay down on the ground and put your hands behind your back, that is a peaceful arrest. And then you'll go to jail or the detention center, then you'll get out like you did. But then when you are defying the law and we are telling you you have to leave, then it turns into this. Now, people say, well, it was aggressive. Well, on the front page of the Charlotte Observer the next day, you will see all of my officers taking people down with no knee strikes, no batons, no pepper spray, no tear gas. It's just simple hands on. Now, let's see, what does a tire jack has to do with a peaceful protest? A guy swinging a tire jack on the front page of the Observer, that's not a peaceful demonstrator. Now, if you look at what happened, this jail support thing has turned into exposing the need for mental health and housing, because now you see that it has exposed Charlotte is not taking care of their people with behavioral health issues and housing process. So now it is turning to almost completely the opposite. And we're not addressing that issue. And like I said, unless somebody tells me that we need to take care of that, they can stay on the corner for the rest of their lives.
And so did you, because I know later that night you were actually still at the detention center and
Till 8 o'clock at night,
waiting for whoever was in charge to come talk to you.
Waiting for whoever's in charge, whoever want to have a conversation. And I'll say this because you know me, sister, I put out an email to 365 pastors in this city of what went on, what do you want to do, and if you want to talk to me, I'm here. Nobody. Now, everybody, forgive me for this call, but this is my new saying. Everybody want to bump their gums and tap their thumbs on the keyboard. But here's what you haven't said. When a man of the clergy comes to me and says this, I'll never forget it. He comes to me and he runs up to me, Gary, what you doing? What you doing? I said, wait a minute, back up. What do you want to talk about? Well, I want to know why this is going on. I said, well, let me explain it to you. So then in the middle of it, I said, so what is the message that you're going to take back? Well, both of you all got legitimate issues. I said, that is a lie, because you only talked to me and you didn't talk to them, but you want to run back and say that you talked to both of us and you have not talked to them. And I said, these people are crapping on my stuff, doing all this. And I quote, I said, and they took down and burned my flag. A man of the clergy said this. I was there when they took down the flag and destroyed it. And I said, well, why you didn't tell somebody? Quote, I didn't know who to call. Okay. And so then that's where we are. If you want to have this thing, and here's what I'll say. If the brother, and you know, it's not that I'm calling him out. I want him to say he didn't say it. But that's what we deal with. So take a stance. But now we are now exposing homelessness and mental illness on that corner. Who will take a stance and address that now? Because if you see it, it still goes on. And now they're still leaving human feces in my breezeways, use bathroom tissue in my breezeways, in my walkways, and nobody's saying anything because most of the time people believe I got to side with the protesters to show my faith that I have for the community, and I believe that's wrong.
And so what do you say then? Because I know, because we need to get to what happened on Beatty's Ford over the weekend, get to that in just a second. But one of the things I thought that was telling, that even though, you know, there's, you know, obvious efforts to try to build relationships with the LGBTQIA community, that there was still issues as far as CMPD being, the Sheriff's Department being involved in a problem. Y'all were there last year, had a great time. So has that been resolved, or is there still?
It is in a working form, because what happened, everybody wants to be on the Black Lives Movement and agenda. They think that's going to save everybody. So if you said I'm with that, you're not thinking about all the bridges that we built. When we went to the Pride Parade last year, that's the first time that the sheriff office marched in the parade, still have our Pride t-shirts, still have our car dressed out in Pride. So I am an inclusive leader. So if you want to join me, you can be with me. So it was very offensive when they said they didn't want us to do anything together. And I'm saying, I formed the LGBTQIA committee. I have taken my executive staff to learn what it is. We go to the Monroe Road to time out with the youth and cook for them. And I got what they call glitter bomb. If you don't know what glitter bomb is, then you ain't been over to to the community center. So we are in this great relationship. Then somebody said, I want to treat all police the same. And that's not fair because we built these bridges. But I can tell you one beautiful thing that people said to me: Charlotte Pride do not and does not represent the entire gay community. I've had a great relationship with these people. I had a great conference with some people last night. A young man called me this morning, and we probably have 4 or 5 things already planned. So I'm not going to let, as they say, one monkey stop the show. We're going to move on, and we're going to do it. Now, make sure I didn't call the pride monkeys. That's not what I said. So don't nobody, he called them that. No, I'm just saying one person is not going to stop the show because I know how y'all run back. Well, he said this, so I can get tweets or likes on
Well,
Facebook.
listen, this
I
is a
did not.
replay and it's
Right.
sugar free, and so nobody can take
And
it out of
so
context and
no,
say
so
you
don't
said what you said,
so don't try
and it
to
was very
say
clear.
that. Don't try to say that. It's just that I'm not going to let anybody mess up my legacy, and I'm not going to let anybody mess up the relationships that I have in this community because I have family members and friends with the LGBT community, and one is my dearest friend that we've been friends since we were 5 years old, and I had looked forward to marching with him in the parade. He doesn't know it because I was going to scare him because he don't know I know he moved to Charlotte already, but somebody already told me that, and so it was going to be a reunion because we've been friends since first grade, and I know he moved to Charlotte.
So let's talk about what happened over the weekend at Beatty's Ford Road. And I'm going to ask 2 questions, really. Your perception of how things evolved and shifted from, the jubilation and celebration to what happened technically Monday morning. And what I thought was most compelling, that how the community came together for a silent march, who was there and who wasn't. Right.
That's what, and here's what I'm going to tell people. Your sheriff, Gary McFadden, will be everywhere if they allow me to be. I'm not scared to come out. I'm not scared to be out because I'm going to be the same the entire time. What's as they say, use a word that my grandfather said, what's behooving to me is this. Nobody asked me to come. Nobody says you need to come out. Simply when I saw that it happened, I got calls that night. My son called me that night. Family and friends called me that night. I was up at 2 o'clock in the morning watching it. Nobody had to tell me to go on Beatty's Ford Road the next day. I went because that's my position. And then when I went, then I met all the other people there, and we marched together, and Dr. Jones and Mario and all the people. And so I knew that. But here's what I found out last night. So I'm watching the newscast of us marching, and they had a young man named Mark who was in a bright running outfit. Mark Riley Rayleigh. I call him Riley Rayleigh because I always get the last. Not that I get it mixed up, but that's what I always say. Riley Rayleigh. It's Raley. Mark. So when Mark comes on TV, I hear him speaking, and I say, "Why Mark is talking about his family?" Because Mark is my family. And so only last night that I found out that CJ, who is Chris Gleaton Jr., was killed. That's my extended family. So the Gleaton and all those family, the Durant family, and all of those are my family. And so then I found out last night. So it was emotional for me, and we try to reach out to each other, but it's difficult. But it's a super damper on it. And so here's what I'm going to tell people. People are sitting back with their arms folded and saying, does this really matter? Because do we see the same effort and the degree of wanting and desire there is justice for 4 people? Do we still see that? Now, I'm not saying burn it down the streets. I'm not saying none of that. But are we in the streets asking, can we find out who killed these 4 people? And then that's when you sit back and have to think for a minute. And people are watching us. Of what are you doing? It said that it's 400 people were there. 400 people seeing something happen and only 1 or 2 people come forward. Now, let me get it straight. I'm not throwing shade to anybody. I'm just saying, so people are going to say, this matters. We talk about it, but now it is back in our house. And now we're not going to say black on black. It is 4 people who lost their lives.
Mhm.
Why aren't we out beating the bush wanting justice for those 4 people? Because
Mm.
that's when you say, do we march? Do we do the candlelight visual? Do we go to door? We demanding justice, and here's the sad part about it. Al is not going to come. Jesse's not going to come. And I'm pretty sure that none of these 4 people will have a gold casket at their funeral.
Mhm.
And so that's
And
what I look at it. It's not going to be televised. It's not going to be hours and hours of gospel singing. It's not going to be dignitaries coming from all over. CNN is not going to talk about it. We're not going to be on news every night. But to those 4 families, they want justice too.
so
And it
two
bothers me. I'm sorry, go
so
ahead.
oh no, you're fine. So 2 things, because I kind of teased about this when I talked about the show, that we had 3 words of the day. First word is fallacy. Second word is supposition. And the third word is pontificate.
Mm,
And so the fallacy issue is this whole fallacy of black on black crime. Because one of the things I found very telling after this happened, when the movement was starting, everybody was checking everybody. Well, what about black on black crime? And people checking each other. That's not what this is about. Black Lives Matter is not what this is about. And as soon as this happens in our backyard, now it's we don't do this and we don't do that. And I say, and you're just spreading the same narrative that has allowed that very idea of black on black crime to even be calcified in our existence when it is a fallacy. And people don't understand why it's a fallacy, why you don't hear about white on white crime or Latino on Latino crime or Asian on Asian crime. Why specifically over the course of since the 80s has this concept allowed to be calcified, and how we as black people allow ourselves to even say it and
right.
give it life.
Mm,
Because it's one thing if white folks say, let's just keep it real, because you can educate on the difference between statistics and proportion and all of that. But when we within our own community spout that same nonsense and not even understand that it's a fallacy.
it
So
is.
I'm going to yield the floor. Why is black on black crime an actual fallacy? Why is it a lie?
Crime is crime.
Right.
It's just as many people. I mean, when serial killer, and I laugh about this. I hate to say this, and I know it's sugar-free talk. One person is killed, black killed a black. White people kill multiple people. When they kill people, they shoot at the whole school. You never see. So it's something that they can always throw shade on us, because it's pretty much checking us that you're not concerned about your community. And but like I said, there's not Asian on crime. There's not white on
And it
crime.
happens. We all
And
know
it
it
and, and,
happens,
and it
but it
happens.
doesn't get labeled that
But
way.
see, we get bamboozled because somebody else started to talk about it, and some of us who are less educated takes it in as a good talking point. But it's no different.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than all the white people killing people, Asian people killing people, and everybody else. But we just dance with that. Said that's nonsense. Let's just talk about violence,
Mm-hmm.
community violence. Let's talk about community violence. But we don't. We
And
don't.
it's
And
about proximity. I mean, we
it
all know
is.
this. It's
If
about
if
proximity.
I'm in your neighborhood and everybody look like me, it's going to happen.
Right.
And I tell people this, and I laugh with one of my cousins. He is black. I mean, he's like, we say when he get out the car, the oil light comes on.
See, shade. Nope, we're
But
not doing.
he's a beautiful brother, because we always say and this is why, because we call him oil. We call him oil. But when his daughter was born in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
did she speak English? Did she
Wow.
speak English for the first? English is her second language.
Mm.
But her great granddaddy, her granddaddy, everybody is African American. But he just over in Japan in the service, and he stayed. Then all of a sudden he gets married, and he has these children who his wife is African American, he's
Mm-hmm.
African American, and they have these children that speaks Japanese
Mm-hmm.
because that's the culture. So in proximity, whatever you hear, whatever you learn and see, it's still proximity.
Two
But
questions, and I see two questions. I think, Josh,
come
I'll
on.
get to your question in a second. But second word was supposition. We've kind of covered that. No, the facts. Let's get to the facts before we have Twitter fingers, Facebook fingers,
Bumping your gums and
Instagram
tapping your
fingers.
thumb.
Right. I like that. Bumping. We won't be doing that
That's right.
here because we need to know what the facts are and have the ability to set the record straight. And so the reality is that, as far as what happens and what you saw on television is always only part of the story. And I challenge those of you who are watching, before you pass judgment, actually go into, I think it's on Charlotte Uprising, because that's what I look for first. When you were actually having the conversation about why you have to leave, and this is what we're willing to do, and we're willing to help you move, and we have people available, and we have trucks available, and all of that. Because what I found so compelling, I watched somebody else's feed. I'm not going to say who, in the legal field, and the very things that were discussed that you offered were the very things that, okay, well, now we got to move all this stuff and all of that. And it's just like, you had no legal right to be there, period.
And
And
that's
I
what people
think
don't.
that's,
And I mean, the person who was filming me, because I remember him, she was sitting there, and I'm talking. This is not like, come on, work with me, y'all, work with me. But when you go
mhm,
out and you get it back and forth, then you said, okay, I have to protect my citizens who are coming back and forth. And I said, we will bring the truck. I said, and if people seen that, why would we bring a box truck if we're going to take people away? We
right.
brought a box truck and pickup trucks to say, we can move you to another location. Now, here's what they won't tell you now, that night, working with different people, we were trying to come up with a second plan. We
Hmm.
were going to let them have a table inside of the detention center beside the door that people come out. But they want tension, they want conflict, so they'll have a platform. So we're saying you can have a table, you can bring your water inside. Even we even said, we'll store your water. We'll store your water because we don't want 25 cases of water outside. But at 5 o'clock, that door is going to be locked. So if you want to get 10 cases out and put them on the sidewalk for the night, that door is going to be locked. But when you want conflict so you can be relevant, then you
Hmm.
got an issue.
Gotcha. Hence the word supposition. Final
That's it.
word, pontification.
Man, what's that is? What's pontification?
Where you just say a whole lot, but not really. You're blustery. You're saying things to be heard, which is kind of part of where we are with certain situations. But I chose that word specifically because as an elected official, it's sugar free with you. But I think we're all very cognizant of elected officials who are simply pontificating and not putting in the work.
I guess that's what you can call it. I call it something else.
Well, I
You
say I'm
know,
using these are SAT words. Can I
pontificate.
have my
Can,
SAT words for the
can you
conversation?
spell? I'm gonna get that word, and I mean,
Pontificate. You have to
I'm
say it like haberdashery, sir.
pontificate. So people are pontificating, a little bit too much. Because here's what I said: this is time for work. Here's what I'm going to say to you all: if I run for office again, check me. See if I did the work. If I said I'm going to do something, if I'm going to make something happen and it didn't happen, then check me. But then also allow me to say, look what I did while everything is going on. So when you're going to say, well, how good was your sheriff? Well, he got 1,500 people inside a detention center and nobody inside caught COVID-19. But what was he doing when that was happening? Book club, debate team, and creating something else. So while they're out there, doing all this pontificating, then you need to say, don't let somebody tell you, well, we got resources. Well, what are the resources? Tell
Mhm.
me what the resources are. Well, we are doing this. Well, no, tell me what the task force is about. If you got a task force, tell me who's on the task force and what are they contributing to the task force. What is the results of the task force and what are the things that we take away from the task force that we can implement in the community? And by the way, what is the deadline to implicate them?
Mhm.
Because they'll check the law enforcement. Because what I did not pontificate when they said that a man is beating. Let me make sure we get this straight. What we saw in Minneapolis, Minnesota is a murder.
Mhm.
Gary McFadden said it with 2 R's. That's a murder.
Mhm.
Everybody should have been charged and not with reasonable doubt because they had probable cause. But then I look at what I was doing. So what your sheriff did is look at what we're doing from the sheriff's office side and say, we're going to have duty to intervene policy. We're going to have racial equity and racial profiling policy. I'm going to have a use of force policy, but then I'm going to have a policy that most people don't talk about. We're going to have a system that we're going to look at these officers on their performance and their complaints to be looked at daily. Now, where would you find all of those now? If you say, well, where are they? Mech Sheriff, MECK Sheriff.com. Look under hot topics, and then you'll check on this thing that says community and citizens and law enforcement contact. So whatever a law enforcement comes in contact with a citizen, there are my policies, procedures are online. Educate yourself, and then you can hold me accountable. Everything about eviction is online. Every order that the governor has put out is on these hot topics. So here it is, an elected official, which I hate saying, has put everything here for you to move forward. But you're doing something else. And so when people are pontificating, you need to call them out.
Look at you using my
That's
word.
right. I'm
all
gonna get that.
effectively in
I'm
sentences.
gonna get a shirt that says that with a small P on the front.
Pontificating. Yeah, and whenever she goes said like pontificating.
Yeah, that's right.
Last question I'm gonna take from the audience before we wrap up. Now, Josh Proby asked about how do you feel about qualified immunity and removing qualified immunity from the perspective as a former officer, and then from your current perspective as sheriff.
Here's the problem that we're gonna have with that. Is that will be effective. Because see, people are gonna use it and abuse it. And here's why. If we can read Ferguson report and look at how that hurt America, and can we learn by using qualified immunity properly, then I said, yes, we should. But will we do it? No, we will abuse it. So I'm still, is it good? Or do we just gonna have people filing complaints just for nothing? And then here's what happened. We won't have no law enforcement that looks like me. Because the first people that we're going to target, believe it or not, and here's what people say, it's going to be the African-American officer. Because they believe at that time you need to love us and do this and that. So I'm still, as I say, I'm still out on that one. Because I want to say, can you do it? Can there be something else done? Now, and please, let me tell y'all this. Please get off that horse about defunding.
Why?
Let me think.
It depends on whose definition you ask, because some people say defund equals abolish, others say defund means reallocate funds.
Well, see, I don't know what they mean. So until we get the real what we want, because you said you believe that the 9-2 vote by city council saying defund the police for tear gas, you simply say take that line item out.
Right. But where does it go? And why does it matter? Because you still got tear gas and you can still use it.
But see, then, and I don't want credit. Let me make sure I say this. I don't look for credit. But your sheriff says we will no longer use tear gas. You sent a memo out and says we're not going to use tear gas. Did we come out with tear gas for the jail support? No. Did we come out with nightstick, pepper spray? And just imagine, we arrested 43 people without injury or incident. And so you have to look at that. So then when you're talking about defunding, no, when you say better training, no, you can't look at the heart of these people. And so we need to sit back and say, what can we really do? Make sure they have certain policies and procedures in place so you can hold them accountable. You want to see any officer, any agency in North Carolina should say, well, here's my use of force. Here's my new policies and procedures. And then we should talk about, racial profiling. There should be policies. And then you should have somebody to look over your shoulder and say, is this good? Because what I'll say right now, you can look at my policies tonight. I want y'all to look at MECK Sheriff.com. Look at my policies and say, I read his policy and I don't agree with that. But just because you don't agree with it, bring me something else. What else should take the place of it in that sentence? And then we can talk about it. So then when we do something wrong in law enforcement, then you can hold us accountable. But you can't hold us accountable for something that you don't know about.
So what advice would you give to sheriffs? This is the last big question. Sheriffs across the country with detention centers, not police departments. I want to focus specifically on detention centers. What 3 reforms are needed now?
Better medical. Uh, I would say mental health. When I say behavioral health, we
Mm-hmm.
need to have some kind of behavioral health inside. You need to have a reentry program, and then you need to of change the language and how your staff treats your people.
And
That
how
you
do you
have to.
train people to do that?
Well, here's what you're going to have to talk to them. Say for mental health is easy, training the staff is going to be the hard because you're going to have to weed those people out,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going to have to hold them accountable. No, you not. No, you don't have two. You don't have 3 use of force. It's time for you to sit down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, I have people to attempt to have suicide in my facility. Simply saying we check all the boxes and she didn't do it, and then we respond greatly. That's not good enough for me.
Right.
And I have a letter to prove it. For anybody want to check me on that, I have a letter to prove it. I told my captain that night, "Can you go back and ask her why she want to kill herself? Can you go back to the captain and find out what's going on in her life?" Quote, that lady said to her, "Finally, somebody will listen to me." And
Mm-hmm.
just simply sitting there and hearing and talking to them means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Put dignity and respect back inside your facility. Do not strip them of their dignity and respect. Please, I mean, their dignity, and give them respect. But having programs for true reentry and connecting with their families is huge. This week, I had a call from a friend of ours, an attorney. He has a 16-year-old who has my name on his arrest sheet for a case here, a case here in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
He is now maybe going to be released, um, and he's 43 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What programs are we
Wow.
going to put? What programs are we going to put me? What organization I can call up next week and say this kid is coming out? How old is he? He's 43, but he went in at
43.
six. But he went in
Right.
at 16. So can we develop? Can Sheriff's Office develop with the community so we can have a warm handoff?
Mm-hmm.
So when I called this guy, I said, "Look, I got these 5 guys coming out tomorrow. They've been in here for 4 years. I need some help on transitioning from here to there." So that's why it's important for them to have a suit. That's why it's important for them to have family at the door. I released a guy um, a couple of months ago. He went in at 14 and he got out at 37.
Mm.
Not one
14.
not one family member was
Wow.
there. Not one family member, nobody from the church. And so we want to create these things where it's a warm handoff, and so we can better allow these people to re-enter our community.
And that's important because oftentimes you hear the "you'll be back" instead of "how do we keep you from coming back."
Well, yeah, and see people that say, "Well, it's mass incarceration." Great. Well, let them out. Well, what are they coming to? When we can
What's
let
the
them
safety
out,
net? Mm-hmm.
right? And here's what I tell people, and they can check me, and if they want to get the numbers. Yesterday, 58 people were released from Mecklenburg County Detention Center back in society.
Mm-hmm.
The day before, 47. I get these numbers every day.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine 300 to 400 people are being released back into society every day. But here's the problem: 53 go out, but 42 come in
Mm-hmm.
for alleged crimes that they have committed or things that. So it is a revolving door. But who stops that door? We can all work together to stop the revolving door. But you can't just say, "Well, what are y'all doing?" No, what is the community doing? What is the
Mm-hmm.
community doing so they won't come in? But what is the community doing when they go out?
So one of the things I want to talk about when we have some time to do the second part is, of course, I got to have you on for the full show with the pictures and all that good stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
Because what COVID and coronavirus has really shown, like you said, is like a lot of the issues. It's highlighted a lot of the issues and the issues with mental
It
health
does.
treatment, even bail reform, which is a hot topic. We just
Hot
didn't have
topic.
time to get to, but we absolutely will. And what that looks like, because there's so many assumptions about bail reform that people just don't get, like the reality of why we have to make real changes to that and stop
We
punishing
do.
people because they're poor. and
I mean,
leaving them
people
in
are,
situations because they're poor, and what that means, and how the belief is, oh, they're going to just go out and commit more crimes.
no,
Well,
they're not.
there's a whole lot of issues and a whole lot of studies
But
that say that that's just not true.
and that's what
Not
we
true.
have to learn as a community, and that's why I love my job, because I can tell you, if I have a program, a halfway house to get people in, it would be terrific. You know, a brother who's coming out who's 16 years old, 16 years old, and he's 43 years old now.
Mm,
Look what he has missed. And are we a community to welcome back home?
mhm,
And what are we going to do when the other man got out when he was 30 something? Imagine his first phone call on a cell phone was to me.
mm. When they didn't even exist when he went in at 14.
And when I told him to get it, you know, we made that relationship. And I said, man, I want you. And he called me. And here's what I remember. And that's this emotional part. He called me one day. I said, man, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to get back on my feet. You know, these people are helping me, because he's working with the Brian Stevenson. If anybody want to give some money, Brian Stevenson in Alabama. That
Mhm.
brother's doing, you know, the one who did the book Just
Innocence Project, yeah.
that brother's doing some work. And so I'm trying to work with him and some people. But imagine when you hear a 37-year-old man say, I said, man, what are you doing? He said, man, I got this thing. He said, where we at? And he said, Chick-fil-A. He said, man, I got this thing called cooking cream. Fascinated with cookies and cream.
Wow.
But just
Wow.
imagine, I've never had a driver's license. I never had a job.
Mm.
I never finished high school. Most of my family is deceased. Because when I left, I was 16, but now I'm 43.
Mm.
And so
And it was
where's the
so different then, because there was no structured sentencing. It was all in judge's discretion. Like, people don't realize that how much that's changed, how structured. Child, we could talk all night, and we
we
need
can come
that's a
back.
whole
We can
nother
come back.
That's
That's
a
a
whole
whole
nother
other.
segment. But
But I think that
how lives are.
we need this because, you know, we have to show people that we are human. I'm going to do my job. If you don't think I'm doing my job, check me.
Mhm.
You know, but this one said we need to do more. Do more about what? So if you tell me to do more, then I can't have a conversation with you. You're going to say you need to do this or try this. Then we do. But I tell the people we at the Wise every day. My staff fed 40,000 meals during COVID.
Say
We
that
took
again for people who
forty
didn't hear you in the
thousand
back.
meals because if you say who fed the kids at the hotels during the school, we did
Mm.
every single day. We partner with community in schools, and then all of a sudden, think about this. And this is what people don't see what we do. So community in schools were working with us, but when everybody had to shelter in, guess who they left in hands of still feeding the kids? We
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
So we continue to feed the kids. So what the beautiful part of that was when the hotels closed down and they wanted all these people out, which you don't know, that I told my staff to take the vans there and make sure that those families get to shelter. So
Mhm.
these are the things that you don't see that we do. And not that saying, I need you to see them, I need you to know about them. But if you come into our world, we can show you all this, what we're doing. But like you
So
say,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
videos that you see one thing, but you know, a Charlotte uprising ain't showing the real video that they have of me talking to them and telling
Mhm.
them what we could do. Well, put that video out there. How we're
Mhm.
saying, please work with us.
Well, I'll drop that in. I'll drop that in the
That's right.
comments, because that's a whole lot of what? Supposition. Second
Supposition
word of the day, people. Well,
with pontificate.
listen, pontificating
That's right.
and fallacy.
That's
So,
right.
for those of you tuning in, listen, and especially if you're catching the replay, if you continue to have questions, if people have specific questions or comments, how can they reach out to you?
This is going to be a beautiful thing. Garry, Garry dot McFadden, McFadden at MECKNC.gov. And my social media is always SugarFree Talk on Twitter and on Instagram. But Facebook is just Garry McFadden. Ain't hiding from nobody.
So if people have questions, or if they have
Okay, MECNC.
Mech
MECK.
NC. Okay, let me
Yeah,
fix it.
NC.
Let me fix it.
Yeah,
All
NC.
right.
Yeah, NC. NC.
MechNC.com.
Yeah,
All right. And Sugar Free Talk on Instagram.
and sugar and
And
Twitter, whatever. Yeah,
all right. So if you need a desire to reach out, Garry, 2 R's,
2 R's.
McFadden at mechnc.gov. If you're not already following him on social media, Instagram and Twitter at SugarFree Talk. How did you come up with the name? I don't think I asked you that.
Well, what happened is every time, and if you see me talking now, I never change. I
Mhm.
can't do the pontificating part of it.
Look
And so
at you.
and so what happened is my grandfather and them says, I'm going to always tell you the truth, whether it's bitter or sweet, but half the
Mhm.
time it's going to be bitter because I'm going to give you the bitter truth.
Mhm.
And he says, never sugarcoat it, never sugarcoat it. No, and I cannot change that. And so then when I talk to people, it's not going to be any, and there can be no sugarcoating. So then one day I said, sugar-free talk. And I've been doing it for a couple of years, and it's nothing that I'm running with, but that's just the way it is. So when people say, well, sugar-free talk is talking, I'm going to tell you the bitter truth. And it hurts because, like I said, if you say I need to do more, I don't know what that more is. If you bring me more, I can do more. But then people get offended when I'm direct with them, because I don't do the pontificating that most people do. I'm just going
You
to
see
say,
what? I done messed around and created a monster. You're gonna be now. You won't be pontificating at work tomorrow, but you will be
no.
telling them about fallacies, and
And
we will not be
fallacies,
working on supposition
that's
people.
right. And saying, please don't. And my staff would tell you, they hate. And see, what I love about it is, and I would, if people in Charlotte have a problem with their loved ones or concerned about their loved ones inside my detention center, that's the email that you email.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you this, in 24 hours or less, you're going to have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't have an answer, they're going to be walking home.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have walked down the aisle, left the county car there, and just catch the bus or get an Uber home until you get your brain right. Because what I don't like is to be challenged on something that somebody else did wrong. And then I'm sitting there looking like a fool, and the mama asking me, why is her son room cold? And I don't know why it's cold. And then you're going to tell me that the heat ain't working, why the heat ain't working.
Mm-hmm.
But that brings down problems that we have inside. And we don't have these fights and everything like everybody think is going on. And so we're just trying to create better citizens.
Last question. I said it was the last question, but
Anyway, we can talk.
But the last question. Tell us at this point, what's the biggest success story that you've seen come out of Mecklenburg County Jail? You don't have to give us a person's name, but somebody who really sticks with you in terms of success, in terms of being able to use that time in to come out better than they were when they came in.
The kid who was there since he was 14 or 16. And if anybody, I mean, it's no hiding. I can show you, and here's what I love about it. I can show you a picture of the day that he walked out. Then I can show you a picture of his face 3 weeks when he walked out, when we were sitting in the restaurant in Alabama having this unbelievable dinner. And then I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional. I know y'all could. And then me and him on that sidewalk that night talking. And he calls me now because he went through, and he'll tell you, he ain't never seen nothing like this inside. He said if he had this knowledge inside before he got out, then he would be much better. But he thanked us for the time that we shared with him. But imagine walking into the haberdashery and spending 2 or 3 hours on picking out suits. And then having him stand on a box, because we give them dignity, standing on that box, recutting that suit, and then him getting those suits in a bag before he leaves. And then I see him at the restaurant, and he's way over there, and I'm waving at him, and we're in this unbelievable restaurant, and we're just laughing because nobody, like he says, nobody's gonna believe where you came from, and nobody's gonna believe who we are. And the people treated us with total dignity and respect. And he says, man. And so now he wants to come back and be my next guest speaker at removing the mask for the men. And so imagine leaving less than a year and going to come back and speak encouragement to these brothers in less than a year. So that, I would think, he would be the biggest, because we still talk. I mean, when a person makes his first phone call to you that he's ever made on a cell phone, and you talk all that day, and then he calls me in the middle, when he calls me and said, brother, are you all right with all this stuff going on? Brother, I'm checking on you. And here, let me say this, and then I'll be quiet. What I have learned is a lot of educated people are not comfortable with who they are. The people who have supported me through this whole struggle and challenge of COVID-19, Black Lives Matters, the jail project, and everything else. And here's the beautiful part. They all are convicted felons who I get a phone call from.
Mhm.
This morning, a young man called me as a truck driver.
Mhm.
When he left here, my name was on his paperwork. But he called me this morning and said, brother, because I helped him to get that job. Brother, are you all right, man? I see what's going on, man. Do you need me to stop here? No, I said, man, I'm good. Imagine people who we had a conflict with are some of my greatest supporters.
Mhm.
But I'm looking for the educated people to support me, but I can't rely on them.
Mhm.
Because as I said, it is hard to educate an educated person because they know everything.
Because they're busy pontificating. And I'm going to leave it at
Pontificate.
that.
You're right.
And there we go. So, ladies, gentlemen, thank you so much for
Pontificate.
tuning in. There's a couple questions I didn't get to, but if you have personal
You want
questions,
me to get them? Are they long?
no, we're
Okay.
good because some of them were piggybacking and we covered it earlier.
Well, see, here's what people can do. They can call my
Okay.
office and we can sit down. They can come and see me. They can come and talk to
Which
me.
is enough. Now I know we can't do it now, but once there's a possibility, for those of you who don't know, you can visit the jail. There are jail tours available. Not now,
Right.
but hopefully they'll be available soon. Our topic, or I'm sorry, our segment next week, which is segment 4, very excited about, because I actually have 2 people who are formerly incarcerated, who will be on the show to talk about their experiences. One specifically white female, one specifically black male. The white female, Anna Lee Harden, was one of my former clients who's actually up at Jail North. We're going to talk about her story. And Arcavius Armstrong, I don't know if you know him. We're going to talk about his story.
Please.
And so we are going to talk about their stories and their reality and their redemption, if you will.
Actually, he spoke at my A spoke at my program. Kivas, we call him Kivas. Kivas actually spoke at my removing the mask. And believe it or not, he'll tell you the story. We met in church and we kind of looked at each other and said, "You the guy." And we had some great times together. But now we're on 2 different planets because we're trying to save the world.
Right.
But I support him 100%.
Well, they will be on the show next week, and then the show after that, incredibly excited about. Our Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Sherry Beasley, will be our final guest. Probably not our final guest because we're going to have a wrap-up show, but we're going to be talking about the system from the perspective, not just of local judges, but of course the importance of the judiciary and some of the challenges that she's facing in her role as the first African American.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
A female Chief Justice. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for giving it to us straight sugar-free, just like you always have. Personal thanks for all that you've done in terms of helping and supporting I Speak from the very beginning.
We're always going to be there for you.
Obviously, and we all know that. And for those of you who joined in late, your words of the day are once again fallacy. Black on black crime doesn't exist. Did you miss that segment? Rewind, because you can catch that. Supposition, stick to the facts, find the facts before you get caught up in sound bites and little bits and pieces of all of that. Get to the real facts.
And stop what?
Pontificating.
That's the one you need to do.
That is the big word, multi-syllable. Look it up. And we talked a whole lot about pontificating. Don't be one of those pontificators. I don't even know if that's a word. But it is. I bet y'all gonna be saying pontificating tomorrow. I know that.
Well, I'm gonna say it tomorrow.
So listen, make sure that, again, if you have not already done so, make sure that you you follow and subscribe at all things social media at the Convo Pod Show. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, I absolutely need you to do that, because there's going to be content that's not going to be on the Facebook page or on the Instagram page. Clips from different shows and various shows. 2 shows that we recorded pre-COVID are going to be released in the next 2 weeks. The podcast studio is back open. Excited to be back there to bring you and some of the other guests for the full shows. But the live format is here to stay. So we will see you all next week. And again, if you need to reach out to Sheriff McFadden, it's Garry McFadden at mecnc.gov. He will respond to your actual email. I thank you for all the work that you do, the things that people don't know from behind the scenes. If you missed that segment, please hit rewind, because there's so much more going on behind the scenes that you don't see and you don't know. And how the Mecklenburg County Detention Center is truly changing the lives of its residents. make sure
Residents.
that you all know that. So thank you again. We will be back. We got to come back for a second segment because we didn't
Come
touch
on.
bail reform and some other
No,
things.
we can touch a whole lot because we're gonna have a whole lot after this COVID and everything else settles down and the Black Lives Movement matters. So we here.
All right.
We here.
Thank
Y'all
you
like my
so
series?
much. Y'all have a wonderful night. Black Lives Matter. If you haven't seen the gigantic banner outside
6
the
by
detention center.
12.
Yeah, and I know people had a whole lot to say about that, but we're gonna come back to that later.
They didn't say it to me.
Well, you know they're not going to.
And I'm gonna hang the other one at the juvenile detention center next week.
Okay. Right. Right. On that note, listen, thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you all next week live at 8:00. Join us for that next segment of the indictment with Anna Lee and Arkevius. I don't know why I keep calling Arkevius, my bad, but Arkevius. And we
Same
will
thing.
see you. Well, yeah, he knows. He knows it's all love. But we will see you all then. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.